Welcome to the Adventist Podcast. Today we're here with Samuel Walters. Sam, thanks for joining us. Please take a second
Yeah,
to introduce yourself.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name's Sam Walters. I am going to be a junior this fall at Bentley University, and originally born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Growing up, I was always pretty involved in school and sports, and had a general interest in finance, if you will. And I got to high school, solidified that interest in the investment club, and ended up coming out east to Bentley University, which has been a great fit so far. I'm majoring in corporate finance and accounting with a minor in business law, and I'm a member of a variety of different organizations, real estate group. I'm the class president for my grade, and involved in a few other sort of investment tailored clubs. But yeah, it's been a great experience, and this. Past summer, I was actually interning at Copley Equity Partners, a low to mid market private equity firm based out of Boston and Denver, which was a great experience. And after my freshman year, actually, I did an investment banking internship, which I could expand on if you'd like. But next summer, I will be interning at Citizens Bank, their leverage finance team, in their investment banking division, which I'm very excited about. Landed that about a month ago or so. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing and congratulations on the recent position and the recent offer.
Thank you.
To start, I'd love to hear what initially made you want to get into finance in the first place when you started exploring it through clubs at school.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, my whole dad's side of the family has their own accounting firm and whatnot. So I was always sort of surrounded by numbers, if you will. And I knew I didn't exactly want to do accounting, but I wanted to work with money at the broadest sense. And like I said, in high school, I was the president of our investment club. Got really interested in examining markets, seeing how so many different factors, whether that's macro factors or just what's going on in the current climate of the world, how that can affect finance all over the world. And Bentley is a very business focused school. They don't really offer any other majors other than finance ones. So being in that environment around that many like minded people really helped me focus in on what path I wanted to take. I did a little bit of experience and internships in wealth management, knew that wasn't for me. And when I had that first investment banking experience, that showed me that, oh, I want to work on deals. I like interacting with all these different parties. I like being part of the negotiations, even the due diligence. Like having those skills really just builds that groundwork to really do whatever you want after the fact. So I'd say just a mix of clubs throughout high school and college, and just being around like minded people who are always sort of just talking or thinking about or pursuing these sorts of careers. And it really opened my eyes, and I really got attached to it, I'd say, the past year or so.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. I'd
Hmm.
love to hear you elaborate a bit more about how you got those positions because I know the junior year process is kind of defined. People can look it up online and figure out what to do, but those summers are a little bit more opaque, a little bit more difficult for underclassmen to navigate. So,
Hmm.
love to hear just starting how you got your freshman summer internship and then how you worked that into getting an internship for sophomore year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as many people know, or maybe some people who are seeing this are getting closer to starting to have to start that internship search and going to college and whatnot. So people sort of know that getting a internship after your freshman year is pretty difficult. Most places aren't looking for freshmen. If there is something for freshmen, it'll just be like a discovery seminar or something along those lines. So I sort of had to kind of take my own approach to it, and I thought, hey, maybe I'll reach out to some alma maters of my high school back in my hometown of Denver. And I ended up doing that. I found an ad at the very bottom of my high school newsletter advertising for a local investment bank. Ended up emailing the managing director there, went through a few rounds of interviews, and landed that internship, which actually lasted 8 months from May all the way to December about. And that experience really opened my eyes to just how the deal processes work. And I was touching everything from Sims to industry reports. So that really solidified my okay, I know I want to do investment banking. And then when that started to wrap up, I started looking for ones at for my sophomore summer, and so I really utilized Bentley alumni and college alumni from my school, just firing off emails and LinkedIn messages. I think the biggest thing there is just volume. If you get a rejection, you're in the same exact place as you started. So really, that pushed me to network as much as I could, and I ended up connecting with a graduate a few years ago who works at Copley in Denver, and he ended up getting me into the interview process. Went through a few of those rounds and ended up landing that. And I'd be happy to expand on those interview processes too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, networking is the name of the game here. So I'd love to get a little more tactical with just starting with your networking process. How would
Mhm.
you identify people to talk to? And then I'd love to hear the system you use. Did you use an Excel doc, like how you managed all of these contacts, managed what stage you were at, kept notes? Because I know if you're
Mhm.
getting on calls with the volume of people that I'm assuming you were, that's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did. I'd say starting really right after your freshman year, the earlier the better, honestly. Recruiting gets earlier and earlier every year. So the first thing to networking is just starting early enough. And you really just some you'll get a lot of no responses, but like I said, just that volume, you'll eventually get people who are willing to talk about themselves, willing to help out. They were in your position at one point in time, so the people in this industry understand what you're trying to do. And when you do hop on those calls, I think it was really important to just be genuine, show your curiosity. Don't go in just like trying to look for a referral immediately off the bat. Like, build some rapport, sort of build that relationship, do research on the bank, on the person that is taking the time out of their day to talk to you. So I know that can be sort of hard to do and kind of frustrating at times if things don't go that route. But I think staying persistent is the main thing. And in terms of just keeping track of all of that, I did use an Excel tracker with just the companies who I talked to, what their positions were at the firm, and then sort of tracker of what status I was with them, like just if I had exchanged emails, if I had one call, two calls, and then sort of, I guess, notifications for when to check in with them. I'd put them just on my Outlook calendar, and it'd be like, oh, in a month or two, follow up with this person when you're starting to narrow in on their application for their respective bank. So it's a methodical process. It can get burdensome at times, but I mean, that's the name of the game now. Like, those cold applications just have such a low chance of making it through, just given the number of applications that are coming through these days.
Exactly, yeah. Look, when a firm's going and looking at hundreds of resumes, everyone starts to look the same after a while. They're all
Yep,
top of their class at their school, have great experience. It's really just who you know at the end of the day.
a hundred
I'd
percent.
love to circle back to step one of this networking process of finding people to talk with.
Oh yeah,
How did you do that and find like try to identify firms that would be likely to take a freshman or a sophomore for a
yeah,
summer internship? Like, was it LinkedIn? Were you going on their websites and looking at the directories, or a
yeah,
combination of those?
yeah. It was definitely a combination. I think one thing that people may rule out or may not think about as much is connecting with people at your own school or in the own clubs or organizations or even friend groups that you're a part of. For example, for me, I had an upperclassman in my investment club tell me about Copley and to maybe check them out, see if they had an internship program. Ended up then going on LinkedIn, seeing if they had any alumni from my school. They ended up having one, and I was able to narrow it down from there. Also, it may be, I think it was better to use email to contact these people. So I actually utilized a free Chrome extension called apollo.io, or you could use any sort of tracker, hunter.io or whatnot, and find their emails, because I thought doing that cold outreach over email was a little different than just the hundreds of LinkedIn messages that they got. So it was a mix of talking to people, then going to LinkedIn and trying to be resourceful and finding these people's contact information, being respectful in your emails, making sure your resume has no typos, showing that you can maintain that level of professionality as well.
100%. Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm sure any underclassmen listening to this is going to be feverishly writing stuff down listening to this. So yeah, now I'd love to move forward to this junior summer internship. I know
Mhm.
that's kind of like the pinnacle of investment banking internships. Has the
Yep.
longest recruiting cycle. I'd love to just hear like first when you started out. I know it gets earlier every year. I know people
Uh-huh.
normally start that fall of their junior year, or fall of their sophomore year, going through prepping for questions. But I'd love to hear what you did to prep for technicals, to set a good base of networking, and then to go and source positions. Just
Yeah.
outline the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. My process actually, it was sort of felt almost like a roller coaster because it lasted probably from November of 2023 to end of June 2024. So a good chunk of months. And I went through lots of interview processes, lots of networking calls that didn't get anywhere. I did handful of super days at different places and those didn't pan out. So it was a roller coaster in the sense that you'd be on these really high highs getting these interviews and then lows after getting rejected. So just trying to, I'd say a piece of advice before I kind of dive into it is just be cognizant that this is very difficult and rejection is all part of the game. And if you just keep pushing, something's eventually going to pan out if you stay persistent. But I really started, like I said, in November, just trying to network, started reviewing. Not like I started taking classes in accounting and finance, those intro classes, so those helped solidify that finance base. I had done Adventus in freshman year, so I understood like how sort of the deeper concepts of how the statements connect, um, sort of the concepts behind these questions instead of just like memorizing the 1400 question guide. I use the 14 question guide a lot, and I think it's great if you don't just memorize the questions word for word because, for example, in a lot of my interviews, I would get the classic depreciation question, but they switch up the amount, $10 or $20. Some would be increase, some would be decrease, and others would use different percent tax rates. So memorization there doesn't help if you don't understand the concepts behind those technicals. So really just trying to practice technicals, talking through them with people who are going through the same thing. I thought what really helped is just getting in a room with people and just bouncing technical questions off each other, critiquing each other. So never be afraid to reach out to some of those people or upperclassmen because they'd be more than willing to help. And every bank interview I did, I did a handful, a lot of first rounds and whatnot to get in the door to those. That involved a lot of networking, getting one to two to even three people at some places. They know your name, so when your resume comes across the desk, they can think back to that call they had with you, vaguely remember maybe where you're from or something that just allows you to stand out from these hundreds of other resumes. So networking to just get in the door, I think, was really crucial. And another piece of advice that people may not think of all the time is after all of these interviews, I found that sending a quick thank you note to whoever interviewed you, I think that helped set myself apart, especially for this last round of recruiting for citizens, especially. Um, for example, on your super days, you're going to be getting interviewed by 6 to 12 members of the firm, depending on where it's at. And to see that you take the time to thank them for them taking time out of their schedules to interview you and talk to you, I think that, like, kind of referring back to my last point of keeping that level of professionality and almost aura of being able to handle yourself in a professional manner in this industry.
1,000%. And so I noticed you mentioned about talk or emphasized internalizing concepts, not answers, for going through the
Mhm.
technical part of the interview process. Were
Yeah.
there any other ways aside from just purely practicing questions that you were able to go and do that? Like, did you take any financial modeling courses? I know there are tons of them online. Did you go through any of those?
Yeah. I did that the Adventist level 1 certification, and that was great, honestly. It not only helped with understanding those concepts, how the statements connect and whatnot, but also how those are formatted as well, and understanding how to use Excel quicker without a mouse on everything. One thing I noticed, for example, when I got to my internship this past summer, being having those formatting skills, knowing what lines are supposed to be double underlined, what fonts or sort of colors to use for certain numbers that connect to different places, knowing that really helps set you apart at these internships. And my internship was a mix of sophomores, juniors, and incoming seniors. So no matter the skill level, I felt like it set me apart, and it allowed me to, when we had our trainings on the statements and when I was asked to dig through data and consolidate it and do yearly or monthly P&Ls or whatnot, knowing sort of the approach to take and having a general even idea of what should go where and what should affect what line item, I think that's huge. And a lot of people overlook that, but being able to understand that really sets you apart, especially for technical interviews as well. When you're given these questions that can be switched up, um, uh, as opposed to that sort of investment banking guide that is so black and white.
Definitely, it makes it really easy to just fall back on the foundation you built through
Hmm.
actually doing it and actually practicing it instead of just pure
Yeah.
memorization.
Yeah, being able to actually click and type in the numbers and link different sheets and actually doing that with your hands, I think that is unparalleled to just like writing down or reading off a screen.
100%. So now I'd like to jump in a little bit more to the Super Day process. I'd love
Hmm.
to hear about any Super Days that you attended, citizens included,
Hmm.
and just what the interviews were like, what the makeup of questions were, and just overall, like your thoughts on the process and any tips for
Yeah.
someone younger than yourself to go through and crush it.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I went through four super days. I'll start with Houlihan Lokey. I had a super day at their Minnesota office, and it seemed like a pretty standard super day. There were three rounds, each one 30 minutes. Each one had a managing director and maybe a VP or senior associate or whatnot. And I had one purely technical round, just firing off technical questions. It was for their industrials group, so maybe like one or two more industry tailored questions or technical questions more specific to that industry. Um, and that one, the other two were behavioral more, just really obscure questions. And then the other one, I interviewed at HarborVest for their secondaries team. That one was pretty similar model as well. Instead of the technical part of it, one of the rounds was more so, I guess, like a quick case study. They gave you one page of a sim of a company of a hypothetical company, and then they give you a few minutes to review it, and then they're asking you questions about sort of that company, what you would do if you were to be in that secondary analyst role, what so on and so forth. The other super day that I had was actually sort of different than these. It was at Provident Healthcare Partners, based out of Boston, New York, and that super day they actually assigned me to generate a two-page sim given, and they provided me with some data on this hypothetical company, two-page sim, and then I had three 20-minute interview rounds, and the first round was actually me presenting that sim and then answering questions about it, and they outlined all the sorts of different requirements and criteria they wanted to see on that sim. That was actually a really helpful interview process, I'd say, even though I didn't land it, because I had to build a football field from scratch. I had to do valuation methodologies in Excel, and Adventus helped with that too, just understanding those basics as well. And um, I had that, and then a technical round, and then a behavioral round. So that one was probably the most exhaustive and intensive. And then the Citizens one was another three rounds of interviews, and the first round was technical, just all technical questions. Since it was for their DCM slash Lev Fin team, that one had a few more debt related technicals and industry related questions as well. And they, in these super days as well, one extra point is that I noticed that they will sometimes ask about a certain deal in that space that they specialize in, or a certain sort of industry trend that they're noticing, or even asking your outlook on a respective market as well. And the rest of those rounds were behavioral too. And one thing I'd harp on is notice how many of these places there were more behavioral rounds than technical. That just goes to show how, while having that technical groundwork is super important, behavioral questions are going to top the cake every single time. If you're not a cultural fit at a bank, there's nothing you can do to save your chances really. And being able to connect with people and share things about yourself by using tangible examples and results, and stories, I think that is what sets you apart in those behavioral rounds.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, firms want to hire someone that it's going to be enjoyable to sit in the office for
Yeah.
12 hours a day with them.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, the cultural fit is huge. I want to backtrack a little bit. So I know you mentioned that you had some obscure behavioral questions. I'd love to hear just what some of those were.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I always got the sort of your top three strengths and weaknesses. Always got that one. And with those, I think it was beneficial to give a trait and then give a quick example of how you're demonstrating that or how you have, or something along those lines. I also had a success story, failure story, a story from when you challenged authority, an example of when you took a leadership position, an example of when you didn't take a leadership position and you were actually just a member of a team. That one was really important because you have to be able to work in a team just as well as you can lead one as well in these industries and groups and product coverage groups and whatnot. And then I would also get sort of what to like walk through old experiences and talk about what you learned, what you can improve on. If they were to ask a professor or former boss, what would they say are my strengths? What would they say are my weaknesses or something that I could work on? So yeah, questions sort of all over the board, and they'd get really specific at times, and sometimes they would sort of dig into some of your answers and ask follow-up questions. So being able to talk thoughtfully and, like I said, just having those really specific examples, I think is huge.
That was great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So I know with these junior internships, the name of the game is really just it's a numbers game. Apply to as many applications as possible. How would
hmm
you go through and source applications to apply to? Like, how would you see when companies would release their internship positions? Because I know that can be really time consuming if a student
Yeah.
isn't doing it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely utilize the Adventus sort of database and those emails that would be sent. I don't know how many of those links I clicked and applied on those websites, but I probably went through, geez, I'd say 30 to 40 first round interviews or first round sort of calls. And throughout that, I was really just using that database, just looking up firms in different cities like low to mid market investment banks or private equity firms or funds in Boston or New York or whatnot. So just trying to take initiative using recruiting websites like Handshake. Bentley really pushes that. Going to your school's career fairs and really just taking that initiative on your own. These banks don't need to go out and really advertise to kids, and if they do, it's going to be at a select few target schools. And other than that, they're not going to advertise that, so you have to go out and find them. I also found that some of these websites for these banks and private equity firms don't have any advertising for their internships. So going on LinkedIn and seeing if people ever did intern at that one specific place, seeing if I would find that, I'd be like, oh, they do take interns, so let me email these people. And then one other platform that I used was called Recruit You. Since I'm in our Scholars of Finance chapter at Bentley University, we have free access to that. And that was also sort of like an application tracker, but it would also post when they would be coming out. So just having a schedule of knowing what opened when and what the deadlines were for some of them, because a lot of these deadlines happen before you're even in your spring of sophomore year. So really just staying on top of it and look, just got to spend a lot of time looking.
What are your thoughts on the community, the field that we have on campuses, and just the community that kind of gets built around Adventus? Because personally, I think that's one of our strongest aspects, and I think
I'd agree.
that's where we set ourselves apart from competitors like Wall Street Oasis and Wall Street
Yeah.
Prep, who are just like running this like broad direct to consumer model and not really building
Yeah.
up like little
Yeah. I
cohorts and
mean,
communities.
it's so much more personalized, and like kids love that. Like young college kids like want something that's more like tailored to them, and being able to see that, oh, I have two, three, four kids that are like basically the same age as me who are gonna sit down with me and walk me through everything like patiently, like not expecting me to know everything. Like that draws people in, and I think that's had a tremendous impact.